You're all well, and welcome to Nightmare Nostalgia. You wanted it, so you got it, part 2. And in this one I'll be talking about the plot lines and the different areas in the game and the different things to do with it and the items. Basically everything I missed in part 1. Epic fail, Mr. Badger. So what I'll be talking about first is the fact that you had 4 people. That's right, count them, 4. So you had the main dungeoneer, and you had his or her 3 friends. There was obviously the dungeoneer, and then you had the 3 friends that were almost guiding them through the maze-like dungeon. The dungeoneer would wear a helmet, which would mean that they would not be able to see forwards, they could only see down. So that is why you'd need the 3 other friends to guide them through the maze. They saw on like a TV screen what was going on in the dungeon, and then what you'd need to do, the first thing you'd need to do is choose a quest. So you had the sword, the shield, the crown, or there'd be different ones later on, like saving Merlin, saving the dragons, or doing a specific task that was asked of you. Then once you would choose your quest, you would enter into a room that either would have food in it, or it would be a puzzle, or there would be a spyglass, or there would be a sort of an enemy in the room, or there could be lots of different things like a spell. So first of all, you would have to be guided as the dungeoneer. You'd have to be guided. So they would use language like walk forwards, run forwards, sidestep left, sidestep back, sidestep to the right, sidestep left, things like that. And that's what used to get them in a lot of trouble, and they used to die a hell of a lot, because if the kids didn't know their left from the right, you're in trouble, because the amount of times they fell off the cliff and it was game over. But anyway, getting back to the rooms. So you would have a puzzle room where you would encounter a jester that would give you a riddle, or a wall monster, which I don't know if I mentioned it in part 1, but the famous one that I love would be Granitas. So Granitas would ask you 3 questions and then an optional 4th. If you got that right, you would be able to progress even further in the game, because it would give you a special clue or another password to get to the next level that you wouldn't have had previously. So it was almost like an extra chance. If you got that, you got to be able to command them and get cracking further in the game. The idea was that you could hold food in the knapsack and 2 key items and a scroll, which would have a puzzle on. The idea behind the food was obviously once you got to a certain few levels in, or a few rooms in, your energy would deplete, because the idea was that you're human and you're going into the dungeon zone, which is almost like a different world, so you'd need to eat more and sort out your life sprite, otherwise you would die, because it's just one of these things where you were constantly draining of your energy. So the idea was that you ate lots of food to get further in the game. And the scrolls would have a spell on it, and it would be fire, light, that sort of thing. To cast it, you would have to say it out loud forwards, and to decast you'd have to say it out backwards, and that would help you get further into each room, especially if there was a dark room. The idea was that if you cast like a light spell, you'd be able to traverse the awkward room, but if you didn't have the light spell, you'd just fall off a cliff. They wouldn't let you get further, I don't think. I don't think you would be able to, even if you tried, because most of the time the whole room would be really thin and you'd have to traverse it. So you need the light to progress. Later on they introduced such items as the the spyglass, and the eye shield, but I'll get back to those later. first of all, in the knapsack you would have, like I said, the food, the scroll, and then you would have to pick an item like a jewel or a piece of gold, or like even a flower, things like that. And what would happen is that, or even a knife or a dagger or an axe, but generally if you picked a weapon it would mean game over, because the idea was that you're the good guys versus the bad guys. But that came later on as well. To begin with, in the first series it would just be Treguard or Treguard and Pickle later on setting you challenges, but once Lord Fear came in, you would have Pickle be Treguard's right hand man, and they would both try and defeat Lord Fear with you. So that was quite good in the end, because obviously it was almost like the kids and Treguard and Pickle versus Lord Fear. Whereas in the first series it was almost like Treguard was with you, but it was almost like you were being challenged by him, so if you died you couldn't complete the challenge. Yeah, so where was I? With the key items, that would mean game over, or not necessarily, but it could mean it was hard. Say if you picked the wrong item, say if you picked silver and they really wanted gold, it would be harder because they wouldn't give you as many clues, or they wouldn't give you a specific item 3 or 4 rooms on, and you'd need that specific item to get through a door or get past a particular bad guy. So generally it would be game over, or chopped up into little bits by goblins, or falling down cliffs, or eaten by giant spiders, or blown up by bombs. Any of these things can happen, and this would all be just if you forgot one item. The game was a bit of a git, pardon my French, because I think if I was to play it even now I would die straight away, and evidence of that is the YouTube Geek Week episode of Knightmare, where they had adults playing and they still got totally trashed by the dungeon. So yeah, where was I? Oh yes, I was talking about Lord Fear and the spyglasses, and the idea in the invention of Lord Fear, you would get a spyglass where you could nose in on the enemy's goings on. So you would get a vital clue, and the idea was that you held it up for as long as possible. I'll use this cup as an example. So you would hold it to your eye and look, and then the longer you looked, I'm going to end up with tea in my eye, and instead of tea you would end up with a fireball in your face, being instant game over. But the longer you held out, the more information you got. So that was the idea behind that. And then obviously the more information you had, the further you could get through the puzzles and the dungeon. After a while they introduced something called the eye shield, which was quite interesting, but I think it was just an excuse for more special effects, and good luck to them. The idea was that it was a first person view and you could see in front for a short period of time, and you would have to traverse through a tricky forest or get past the goblins, which often would make this noise, awooga, 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 and when you heard that you would have to run through the forest or run through the cavern for your dear life, which was pretty mad, because I bet it added the tension. And when you saw the goblins and heard that noise, you were like, oh crap, go on, they've got to run, they've got to run. So it really made the game tense. After a while they introduced dragons as well, which was really good CGI, where you almost, that's another thing, if you didn't have the gold bar you couldn't pay for the dragon, which would mean you couldn't get further on into the different levels. So later on, if you had the gold bar, you could pay the dragon and get further into the level. And there was different themes on this, just dragons. You could pay the ferryman or the boatman and get further into the dungeon. So it was one of these things where you always needed some form of money in order to get further on. And the clue items and the quest items were more for the wizards and the different other characters. You would sort of pay them in favours, or you'd give them back an item that they had missed. So it's very much like a a live action of Dungeons and Dragons, or where you would need to, you know, almost have an inventory like nowadays computer games, where you need to have an inventory of items and then you would use them. It reminds me of like a TV version of a choose your own adventure, because there were so many different paths you could go through. If you went through one door, it would lead to a different set of quests and a different lot of actors and a different lot of experiences, and then if you went for another door, it would lead to a different set of experiences as well. So if you picked the sword or the shield or the cup, it would depend on what different order you would play the dungeon in, and what different parts the actors would play, and what different things would happen in the game. So it was always fresh, and that's what I loved about it, because every time you watched it, something different was on. I loved the fact that after a while there was so much going on. Like, you had Pickle the elf, you had the barmaid woman, you had lots of different assistants. There was always a new storyline where you had to defeat Lord Fear in different ways, and it was almost like sometimes Lord Fear would win, other times he wouldn't, and it was really great the way they got the kids involved, writing down all the notes to try and defeat Lord Fear and rescue the maiden or rescue the item, and it really made you feel that you wanted the good guys to win. And it's just a shame in a way that they made it so hard, the game, because only a few kids ever completed it, because it was really hard. They didn't pull any punches, they pulled a lot of hard stuff, and this is like, you know, you wouldn't think kids from the 80s would understand what to do, because this is really hard stuff. You have to be really on the ball for this. So if you got a kid that didn't know their left from their right, you were toast, because they would just fall off the cliff and die instantly. But there you go. So please let me know if there's anything I missed about the fantastic show Knightmare. As I said, I'm always open to doing a part 3. Please let me know feedback as always, and comment underneath. That'd be fantastic. And let me know if there's any more nostalgia videos you'd like to see. I've had some feedback about people talking about the Crystal Maze, so if you want that, let me know. Or if there's another show that you think I'd love to talk about, or you'd love me to talk about, let me know. So keep up the good work, badgerteers, and I'll see you soon. And remember, if there's anything I've missed, please let me know, and I'll add a part 3, because I'm always welcome, and I love this show. I can rabbit on about Knightmare for hours, because I'm overrunning as it is. So please enjoy the rest of my content. There'll be more videos coming up, and as ever, keep on subscribing, liking and sharing, and spreading the badger word. I'll see you soon, guys. Bye.